Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Judelson. I'm the minister at Midrand Presbyterian Church in the Igoli Presbytery. And it really is my pleasure to be able to share in this conversation this afternoon around a topic that is of great interest to me around team ministry and about the importance of building a team in the life of a congregation as that congregation moves forward in ministry. And with me to share in that conversation is Eddie.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eddie Stopforth. I work with Christopher at Midrand, and my other hat is that I am the administrator of the Order of Lay Ministries. I also have spent years training elders in the denomination and have a great passion for training the lay leadership of our church and building up the lay leadership in the UPCSA. That's
awesome, Eddie. So we're going to talk about a lot of that. But first, we want to show everyone a little clip that you found. I know that you are a great soccer fan or football fan, and so I'm going to share my screen quickly and share this video with you. If you guys are ready, here we go.
In the 6-0 win against Serbia and Montenegro, it was built with 26 perfect passes.
That's incredible. Thanks for finding that clip, Eddie. It really is amazing. Besides the goalkeeper, I think everyone in that team touched that ball to score that goal.
Yes, and besides that, if you watch the way the passes went, although there was somebody in every position, they didn't hang on to their positions. If you had the ball and you needed to, you moved into somebody else's position, and that person moved into your space to make sure that your space was covered. So every position on the field was covered at every point, and the ball was the important thing. It wasn't, no one took ownership of that ball. Nobody held onto it. Everybody shared that ball and all of those movements in order for the team to score the goal. Because even the person whose foot was the last one that hit that ball can't claim that he scored the goal, because the goal was scored by the whole team.
Yeah.
It was an incredible piece of football.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a fan, because that's why they call it the beautiful game.
No, that's what they tell me. I'm still not there yet, and my son is trying to convince me that it is the beautiful game. Maybe I'll get there, but certainly it's a great analogy of the importance of teamwork. And I love your point that what was important there was the ball, and what the ball would ultimately do, which would be to score the goal.
Yes.
And obviously the players are important. I mean, obviously, and they're skilled and they're trained and they're fit and they know what they're doing. But their purpose is the ball and getting that ball in the net. Their purpose is not themselves.
And they were all present in the game. They were all watching the ball so that they could see where the spaces were that they needed to run into. So there was nobody sitting out on the left wing saying, well, this is my territory and this is where I stay. There was nothing like that.
Yeah.
Everybody was involved and everybody was present in the game all the time.
So Eddie, I mean, let's now bring this to life in the congregation. I mean, obviously, I'm sure folk who are watching this get the analogy, but just to drive it home that there is, in some congregations within the UPCSA, not all, a sense in which nothing really would happen in a congregation or can happen in a congregation unless there is a minister. We go so far even, and I know you don't like this term and neither do I, that we call congregations who don't have a minister vacant. And as if there's nothing there unless there's a minister. And that, you know, that is unhelpful. Because of course there is something there. There's a whole membership who are gifted by the Holy Spirit and who are tasked to do the work of God's kingdom. But I also don't want to make this conversation just about congregations who don't have ministers. Of course, it is about that. But it's also to recognize that even if you do have a minister, that person, you know, we shouldn't have an expectation that he or she should be a super person doing everything, because we should be nurturing teams in congregations.
Yes, because in any case, I mean, you mentioned this yourself, God doesn't give all of the necessary gifts to any one person. All the gifts are necessary for building up the local church, but they're not given to any one person. And so all the people with the gifts have to work together in order for the congregation to benefit from the gifts that God has given. So this focus on one more important than anybody else type person actually negates the work of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. No, you're right, Eddie, and we really need to move into the space as leaders in the church of encouraging and empowering lay people, not the clergy. I mean, yes, the clergy, but not only the clergy,
yes,
to really get involved in ministry and to take responsibility for ministry. You know, I've realized over the years for myself that although, of course, there are many things that I do as a minister, and there's some things I really love doing, I can't do everything. And a lot of, over the years, I've realized that a lot of my ministry actually becomes about managing people and managing the volunteers. I mean, yes, of course, I'm hands-on with ministry. I mean, you know, I don't want people to misunderstand, but so much of my time is about communicating, checking in with volunteers in the congregation to find out how they're doing, you know, how they're running their programs. Do they need any assistance? Do they need extra volunteers? Do they need to take a break? You know, and that's something that I wasn't born with. That I wasn't even trained for that as a minister. It kind of just developed over the years to recognize the importance of nurturing the team of volunteers. And those include the elders, of course, but not only the elders. There are many, many other people who can minister and serve in the church. And we really need to get away from any sense of feeling threatened as ministers by the fact that there are other people who can do things and sometimes even do it better than us. And that's okay. My role is to encourage that person, equip that person, make sure they're able to do that ministry, make sure they're accountable, make sure they're reporting, so I really want to encourage those who are watching this, and we'll discuss a little later, the importance of, when there is a minister in place, or the interim moderator for that matter, being someone who encourages the formation of this team of people who can do ministry. Now, Eddie, you want to give us a model or an idea, an example of what a team ministry could look like in any congregation in the UPCSA, making use of the order of lay ministries. And so could you just explain to us how that could potentially work? But let's use a congregation that doesn't have a minister, is an interim moderator, and paint a picture of how this could work.
Okay, so if I can just backtrack just a little bit to your role at Midrand, that in fact you are the captain of the team, and every team has to have a captain. and it is the role of the minister to be the captain. So in a congregation where there isn't a minister, this role falls to the interim moderator. But the interim moderator is already the captain of a team in another congregation. And to expect him to be able to give the same degree of commitment to a second congregation actually is not reasonable. So in congregations where there isn't a minister, we particularly need strong lay leadership. And so if you look at the various ministries that take place in the average congregation, then what you need in your lay ministry team is you need at least one lay preacher or even more than one lay preacher. Now, those people can help with the preaching and they can conduct funerals, which is usually a hugely important thing. When a family needs a funeral, they need a funeral. And lay preachers can conduct funerals. And if a lay preacher is conducting a funeral for somebody in his or her own congregation, then the personal contact is already there because they know each other.
Yeah.
Then you need to have a children's ministry coordinator who will take care of the children's program. Then that person sets up the program, and that person is responsible for the oversight and care of the teachers or the group leaders, whichever terminology you use, so that the interim moderator doesn't have to take that extra step and become involved with the people who are doing the hands-on work. Depending on the ages and the numbers in your congregation, you might need a youth pastor who would have more or less the same role to play as the children's ministry coordinator, but it is a bit wider because teenagers' needs are different to small children's needs. But congregations would decide that depending on their circumstances. It would be wonderful if people had a worship leader, because there are a lot of practical things around, the logistical things around setting up the service of worship. Things like making sure that if what songs we're going to play, if we've got new songs, is the choir going to be there? Do we have a singing group? Do we have a good mix of songs? Rather than the lay preacher or somebody else doing this, to have somebody who has a passion for music and for worship, to take responsibility for that and to bring that part of the work to this. And then a major role is the pastoral care aspect of life of a congregation. And it's quite easy to say, oh, that's the elders' responsibility. And it is. I'm not taking this away from the elders. But there's a great deal of coordination that needs to be done in the area of pastoral care. There's keeping track of who's in hospital, of when they've been released from hospital, of who's got special needs, of who needs someone to get their grocery shopping done for them. All of those things are more administrative than they are perhaps intuitive. And it would be wonderful for a congregation to have somebody who kept track of all of that, somebody who coordinated the pastoral care. And at the moment, the Order of Lay Ministries recognizes all 5 of those ministry streams. And the OLM could train people into those areas of work so that if a congregation was in fact without a minister, or even if the congregation wasn't without a minister, the congregation would know that the people who were heading up those areas of ministry in the congregation, that those people had a sound, solid foundation and that they knew what they were doing. It wasn't just somebody who had been picked at random and because they needed to be somebody.
Yeah.
And each of those people would have a team of people working with them. So that the team concept then becomes that you have teams of people on the ground who each have a captain. And then you have another team which is made up of those captains, which works with the overall captain, who is then either the minister or the interim moderator. And the ministry happens at all of those levels because people are released into that ministry and they are empowered to do it. And in the 2 years' time, when the interim moderator has to be changed, it doesn't disrupt the work of the congregation to the extent that it disrupts the work of the congregation now, because the basis of the ministry stays in place. And it's only the captain who will have a different face. And that I think is workable.
Yeah.
And I think it's workable.
Yeah, no, awesome, Eddie. And just to kind of slot in there to say that, of course, the interim moderator is the moderator of the session, and so the reporting of those ministry leaders would be to the session with the interim moderator, obviously convening that. So we mustn't let anyone get a sense in which the church council is kind of sidelined at all, because that reporting would be into the church council, which is moderated by the interim moderator. So it sounds so simple, because when you hear it, you think, oh, of course, that's exactly right. That's what we should be doing in our congregations. But of course, it takes intention and effort, where somebody or the session in particular really needs to grab this vision by the scruff of the neck and say, we're going to drive this. We're going to identify people. We're going to nurture them. We're going to hold them responsible and accountable and encourage them. They're going to be reporting back to us about things that are going on. We're not going to feel threatened because now we have somebody who's organizing our worship. We've given them that responsibility. The presbytery has recognized they have that responsibility. So we're okay with that. So, because I know that sometimes, we get our feathers ruffled when we think that, there are people and systems in place that may not be what we're typically used to. Where the typical model in our church is that you have the session, of course, which is the ruling authority in the church, and that the elders need to do everything. And the elders do need to work, that's for sure, but they don't have to do everything. So this is just kind of extending that, as it were,
Yes, but it's also incredibly practical to divide your session up depending on the passions and the skills of the people in the session. So that instead of everybody on the session being involved in everything that needs to be done, within the session, you have smaller groups. And if the session is represented in the working groups of every one of the ministry areas, then the session is still overseeing the work of those areas. And the reports come back to the session, which is where the interim moderator would receive them. So we're not restructuring the UPCSA. We're simply saying that there is a more deliberate way of building the lay leadership so that you have a stronger foundation in every congregation. And you don't have congregations becoming sheep without a shepherd because their minister has been called somewhere else, or because their finances have deteriorated to a point where they can't afford to pay the stipend anymore. It's like with the football game. The important thing in the football was control of the ball. And the important thing in a congregation is the ministry. It's not the individuals, it's the ministry. And we have to find a way for the ministry to carry on, regardless of the circumstances in the outside the congregation.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Eddie. And just before we started this conversation, we had another one, and we were chatting about some of the pitfalls, or not the pitfalls, the dangers, perhaps, when you don't have a team ministry in place, and you don't have a minister in place. What can you recall what we spoke about?
Well, there are two possibilities. And the one possibility is that nothing happens.
Yes.
That you then do have this shepherd, these sheep without a shepherd, and they simply mill around, and they wait for the next interim moderator to be appointed, and then they expect the next interim moderator to deliver church to them. And nothing else happens, and then a congregation gets really stuck if that's where they are. And the other very real risk is that if you have a strong character, a strong personality in a congregation, a person, and I don't want this to sound negative, because very often it grows out of a very strong sense of responsibility. That you have a situation where somebody feels that they need to be responsible. And so you get, it's almost like they take ownership of the congregation. And they invest so much of themselves in that congregation that it's like the congregation belongs to them and it's their little space and their little everything. But it cannot be, because in the first place, this is God's church, not ours. And in the second place, there are any number of other people in that congregation who have a responsibility and a role to play. And no one person can be a congregation. And both of those two extremes can happen if you don't deliberately have a different structure in place in order to guard against it.
No, that's exactly right, Ed. And I think many of us will have stories of examples of both, but also of strong personalities who perhaps had started out with the best intentions, but the power, influence, and authority kind of goes to your head, and then you guard very jealously this thing that you've nurtured, and resist any change and other leaders and things like that. So this and so I think, for me, looking at this model, certainly the minister plays a big role, obviously, in this. But if there's a congregation who does not have a minister, and obviously has an interim moderator, but doesn't have a resident minister who can be driving this process, the session has to take ownership of this vision, and have to understand that, minister or no minister, there is ministry to take place. There is God's kingdom work that must happen, and therefore they must step up, as it were, and begin to create these ministry teams within the congregation, who can then, be reporting to the session, and then when a minister comes, or when an interim moderator kind of gets involved, the congregation is ticking over, and more than that, it may even be flourishing. There may be growth in new areas. There may be I really think, and if there are elders who are watching this or participating in this, it is so important that the session get behind this team ministry idea, because if not, it's just gonna die. And I just wanted to say as well, just from my perspective, as a minister leading a group of elders and other team ministries, that I find great joy in seeing other people do well in ministry. It's absolutely wonderful to see someone discover their gift, their spiritual gift, or their natural talent for something, and then to use that to make a difference. It is one of the most satisfying things. So, so what drives me in wanting to encourage volunteers and people to participate and form part of a team is because of what it means for them. I mean, yes, the ministry grows, but what it means for them, they're empowered, they're making a difference, they are using their lives for God's glory. And I mean, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So to the elders who are listening, to the ministers who may be listening, that should be one of our motivations, is to help our members be their best for Jesus. And when they are doing their best and being their best for the Lord, that's all that we need to ask for. And it's really wonderful to see that happen, I must say.
Yeah, indeed. So I had a situation in a congregation once where it was a very small congregation, and there was quite an active Bible study group that had a leader. Okay. And there was a conversation around building up new leaders in areas. And so the question arose, so what happens if we discover that we have another teacher? And so the person who was the Bible study leader sort of looked very disconcerted until the answer came, we'll start another Bible study group. And I mean, and that's the point.
Yes.
This is not about taking over. This is about extending. It's about making more ministry, about reaching more people, about growing our congregations, about growing the kingdom.
Exactly.
And we have the tools. We have the spiritual gifts which each of us has been given. And within the denomination, we have the Order of Lay Ministries in existence, which is there to train people. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't cost anything at all.
No.
Well, it does. I mean, it costs time and effort, but it doesn't cost money.
Yeah.
And so it's doable.
Yeah.
It's doable, and it is a way forward.
Yeah. And, Eddie, 100% with you. It was a number of years ago when we came up with this idea of formally recognizing lay ministry within congregations. And it has taken some time to kind of grow in scope. But it's there, it's available, it's a fantastic resource. My prayer would be that many more congregations would make use of the Order of Lay Ministries. The Foundations course, by the way, is really fantastic. I think it's a 5-module course, and it provides a foundation, a solid theological and ministry foundation to any of these 5 areas. Because then after that Foundations course, people can go on and do some other kind of training in particular areas. But it's fantastic, and I just want to thank God for you, Eddie. You put so much effort and energy into the coordinating the OLM and the team that you have, because you also have a team, and trying to encourage them to be involved in the Foundations course and in encouraging congregations. So that's really awesome. And so folk who are busy listening, and no doubt there'll be a conversation after this, but how would they get hold of information about the OLM?
The easiest way is to come directly to me.
Okay.
And I think my email address is just about everywhere, but it's eddiestop@global.ca.za.
Great. Eddie Stop, not Stopforth.
Eddie Stop, all one word. Eddie Stop
at global.ca.za.
Wonderful.
Well, I really hope that some folk will pick up the baton, as it were, because at the end of the day, it is not about the individual personalities of those players on the field. Although some soccer players don't know that, but anyway, I'm not going to get into that. It's actually not about them. It's about the team, and it's about getting that ball into that net. And for us, as you said, the ball is the ministry of the church, partnering with Jesus in the work of the kingdom, getting the good news out there, making a difference in the wider community, bringing hope and life and uplifting others. That's the ball that we've got to pass around amongst ourselves and make sure that we can deliver it and get out there and make a difference. So we must just get over ourselves and not worry too much about our place, other than where it is in the team, and that we are able to work together to make sure that we can achieve great things for the Lord,
Amen.
Awesome. Any other last comments, Eddie, before we end off?
No, that's fine. Thanks. I'm going to be part of the discussion that follows this video. So if people have got any questions, they can raise it during the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Eddie, and thanks everyone for watching. And please get the news of the OLM far and wide and get excited about team ministry. It really is the only way to go in building God's kingdom. Okay. Bless you all. All right. Bye now.